أتى من عندي ربي رحمة للعالمين صلوا عليه وسلموا في كل وقت كل حين.
Okay, so after he came down, we saw the angel for the first time, where did he go? Abu Bakr, Omar, Ali, Uthman, where did he go? Where did he go? Khadija, right? Who's what? His wife. Did he go to the marketplace? Did he go to where did he go? He could go anywhere he wanted to, right? He went to his wife. Right? And then what did he say to her? All this stuff happened. There was an angel. I don't know what does he know. Can you imagine talking about an angel to your wife? And what did she do? She comforted him. She says, no. You are a good man. Allah would never forsake you. You're good to people. This is emotional connection. And he told her to cover me, right? Cover me, right? So she's supporting him, right? So this is a very, very important point I want to make, right? So much so that when Prophet ﷺ, he remarried after Khadija passed away. He used to visit her friends of Khadija, and they used to talk about how much they missed her together. Wow. Can you imagine? Bereavement. We don't even tell our wives we miss them and they're alive. But he goes to the friends of Khadija and talks about how much they miss Khadija. Support group almost, right?
The special woman in Akhirah. She was the first person, not the first woman, the first person, the first human accepted Islam. What an honor. But every honor comes with responsibility. What did she sacrifice? Belief. To be a builder, to be someone different, you have to believe in what you have. Number 2, you have to be very hard worker. And number 3, you have to sacrifice. Things doesn't come easy. This is a noble woman, a rich woman. And then what happened to her? Went through famine. She had to migrate. She had to give up a lot of things for only one reason. To support her husband. As we said, by salam, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She became the mother of one of the best women in Jannah. She was one, but her daughter also was one, Sayyidah Fatima. She was the grandmother of the 2 masters of all the martyrs in Jannah, Sayyidina al-Hassan and Sayyidina al-Hussein. She died in Ramadan, the 10th day of Ramadan. She died in his hands, alayhi salatu wassalam. And she actually died as a result of the famine she went through and the difficulties she went through just because she's a believer. He actually laid her down in her grave, he alayhi salatu wassalam, by himself. And he personally supervised the preparation of her grave. Alayhi salatu wassalam wa alayhi salam. Uniqueness after she died is the non-ending feelings and love he had, alayhi salatu wasalam, for her for years after she died. Whenever she is mentioned, his face changes. Her sister one day came in, and this is reported by Sayyidah Aisha. Her sister came, knocked on the door, and Sayyidah Aisha said, he said, let her be Hala. So he was hoping that the person who's going to come and enter the house, this is years after, this is in Medina, that it is Hala, her sister. And when she entered, his eyes filled with tears. This is love. His love to her was legendary, to the point that Sayyidah Aisha used to say, I have never had jealousy to a woman I have not seen, but it's Sayyidah Khadija. And one day, she said to him, why you keep remembering her? Why you keep anything is given to him as a gift? He made sure that some of it goes to her family or to her friends. And then he said to her, to Sayyidah Aisha, who's another beloved woman to him, and he said, don't hurt me by saying anything about Khadija. What a love is this? What a woman she is. When she entered, look at that. When she entered on him, he stand up, greet her, kiss her, and welcome her. And she would do the same toward him. When he comes, she stand up, welcome him, kiss his hand. Alayhi salatu wasalam loved her immensely. That every battle he goes, when he comes back to Medina, he usually pray in the masjid. That's his sunnah, alayhi salatu wasalam. And then he goes to her house. And he usually makes sure he sees her before he goes to his own wives. And she had a special status with the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. And let's share this hadith. And he said, and imagine a father said this about his daughter. He said, Fatima, بضعة مني, فمن أغضبها أغضبني. Fatima is a part of me, piece of me. And whoever make her angry, he actually makes me angry. She was extremely observant, described as has impeccable memory, noticeably intelligent, articulate, knowledgeable. And this is one of her landmark. And her knowledge is not only knowledge of deen, and many of us will say, of course, she grew up in the household of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. But she had knowledge of poem, dentistry, and medicine, to the point she was asked, we can understand you have all the knowledge about religion, fiqh, hadith, but how do you know about medicine? And she said, I used to watch when the tribes and Bedouins came to Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam and asked him, and he tell them and teaches them a prophetic medicine, and I learned from that. Observant. Was also described as playful. Another famous story about her that she raced to Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam twice in his life. One when she was younger, and she won. And then later on, again they raced and he won. And he laughed, alayhi salatu wasalam, and looked at her and said, this one for that one. She used to ask questions. And we as nation, as ummah, learned a lot from these questions.
Nobody loved God more than him. And if you study how he was with his wives, I mean, it's like stuff that we would be like, oh my God, you know? Like, I'll give you an example. He's asked in a public place, like a public setting, who do you love most? Can you imagine, like one of our shuyukh in like one of these big settings, who do you love most? And he goes, Aisha, my wife. You know what I mean? He's publicly, he's not just showing affection in private in this case, right? Affection verbally, obviously. He's publicly announcing his love for his wife. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He said, Aisha. And then this companion, this is the beautiful thing, companion thought he was going to say him. You know? And so he's like, no, from among the men? Because he's thinking he's next. And he goes, her father. But the point is that even when he's mentioning Abu Bakr radhiyallahu anh, he uses Aisha as the reference point. Even the way he's talking about her, he doesn't even say Abu Bakr radhiyallahu anh, he says her father. So, and the way he used to be with his wives, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, you know, if he'd see her drinking from a cup, he would see where she put her mouth and put his mouth on the same spot on purpose. That's how he showed affection. And there are many examples of this affection that they had. This idea that you're so lost in God, you can't show affection, that's messed up. I'm sorry, but you're just lost. You're not just lost in God. And the reality is that not showing affection is not a sign of spirituality. It's not a sign of, it may be a sign of having a hard heart.
Prophet Muhammad actually is going to transform the role of women because in the Roman Empire, the Christian Roman Empire, women were not allowed to own property. They were not allowed to sign contracts. They had no divorce rights. I mean, they could get a divorce, they had no right to get a divorce. So basically the husband had to be willing to he had to want the divorce. Or some powerful person had to arrange for it to happen. What Muhammad comes along and he says, look, I'm going to give women the right to divorce. It's easier for men to do it. He just has to say, I divorce you 3 times. The woman has to have a reason. But the reasons were extremely varied. For example, you're not producing a baby. So he's sterile or she's sterile. We don't know, but we know somebody's sterile. That was grounds for a divorce. Incompatibility of personality. So you could just say, I don't like the guy. That was grounds for a divorce. So that was transformative. Another thing that the Prophet Muhammad did was he allowed women to be witnesses in law. That did not exist. It did exist in ancient Egypt, but it did not exist in Roman or Persian culture. I didn't go into the details on this, but the Assyrians, the Persians, the Romans, the Greeks, they were all vicious towards women. They really just did not allow women to have rights. And so Prophet Muhammad said women can be witnesses, however, they only count as half a man. So, you need 3 witnesses to convict somebody of a crime, or 6 women, because it wouldn't quite work. But at the time, this was revolutionary, because it was 0 women prior to that, right? I mean, women just did not have that right, so it was really amazing. Another thing that he did was he gave women not only the right to own property, which was shocking and remarkable, but he actually gave women the right to have inheritance. Now, what was supposed to happen was 2 shares went to a boy and then 1 share for a girl. So if there was, if it was a boy and a girl in a family, when the father died, the boy would get 2/3 and the girl would get 1/3. But if there were 2 girls and a boy, it wasn't quite like that, because it would still be 2 shares for the boy and then 1 share for the girl, 1 share for the girl. If there was another boy, it'd be 2 shares for the boy, 2 shares for the other boy, and then 1 and 1, right? You see how that works? So it meant that boys were going to get twice what a woman was going to get, but compared to the Roman Empire, where a woman was going to get nothing, this was really amazing. So in a way, this was a revolution for women's rights.
Muhammad also orders husbands to better treat their wives. Men's brutality and violence were actually common, but they were admitted. The Prophet rejects this model. Because he's a very open and tolerant man, the Prophet never ever hit any of his wives. And he said in a hadith, a good man never hits his wife.
Asma
al-Ansariya came to the Prophet ﷺ, and she said, Ya Rasulullah, ana wafidatun nisa. I was sent by the women. So they picked this woman, Asma al-Ansariya, to come and speak to her. And she said, Ya Rasulullah, ba'athaka Allahu ila al-rijali wal-nisa. Allah sent you to the men and the women. فآمنا بك وبإلهك. We believed in you and in your God. ونرى أن الله فضل الرجال على النساء بالجمع وجماعات. But we see Allah has given some preference. The men, they get the jama', they get to gather, like Jumu'ah, they get to go to Jumu'ah, they don't have problems. There's no little room in the back, smelly, or hidden with a curtain or something like that. No, they get to go in the big nice masjid, right? وَجَمَعَاتٍ, the women were encouraged to pray in the homes. They can pray in the masjid, but they were encouraged to pray in the home. The men go to the jama'ah, and the jama'ah, the Prophet said, is 27 times better. And then she said, وَبِالْحَجِّ بَعْدَ الْحَجِّ, and hajj after hajj. For the woman, it's mandub, she make the fard 1 time. And then it's because it's jihadun nisa. And then she said, and then jihad. They get jihad, fi sabilillah. The Prophet ﷺ said, he said, التفت إلى أصحابه بوجهه كله. He looked at his companions with his entire face. And he said, هل سمعتم أحسن مسألة من مسألة هذه امرأة? Have you heard a better question than the question that came from this woman? Like he's pointing out, look at the intelligence of this woman. And the Sahaba, they said, والله ما كنا نظن أن النساء. We didn't think women could come up with things like this. Right? He's teaching them, no. Right? شقائق الرجال. They're your other halves, your better halves. Right? And then he said, Ya imra'a, listen woman. He said, أقرئ السلام إلى النساء خلفك. Give salam to the women that you left, who sent you. And then he said, وافهمي, understand this. حسن تبعلكن يعدل ذلك كله. just being a good companion equals all of that the men are doing. Just being a good companion equals all of that the men are doing. That's amazing hadith. And that's who he was. He was somebody that elevated and honored people.
They and all the men need to hear what women have to say. And inshallah, there will come a day when the voices of Muslim women will be heard. The voices of Muslim women will be heard more freely in the same way that the wives of the Prophet were able to raise their voices as Allah had commanded them to do. To speak up. And I believe our day is coming. That day is really close.
أتى من عندي ربي رحمة للعالمين صلوا عليه وسلموا في كل وقت كل حين